Welcome to Who's Number 1. Today, we are going to take a look at the top 10 kingpins of all time. These individuals are, or were, some of the most powerful and wanted people in the world, building a drug empire that provided them with money, power, and respect. Let's get to it. Number 10. Carlos Leder. A co-founder of the Medellin cartel, Carlos Enrique Leder Rivos was a Colombian drug lord born in 1949. He was known for his flamboyant and extravagant lifestyle, and he often used his drug money to fund political campaigns and to bribe officials. At the height of his power, Leder was estimated to be worth over $2 billion. He bought a small island in the Bahamas called Norman's Cay, just 340 kilometers off the Florida coast, bribed Bahamian authorities and began transporting tons of white Colombian snow to the US in small airplanes. Leder was eventually arrested by Colombian authorities in 1987 and extradited to the United States, where he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Number 9. Joaquin Guzman. Also known as El Chapo, Joaquin Archibaldo Guzman Lora was the leader of the most powerful drug trafficking organization in Mexico for almost 30 years. Born in 1957 in Sinaloa, Mexico, Guzman became the leader of the Sinaloa cartel in 1989. Guzman's cartel was responsible for smuggling large quantities of cocaine, methamphetamine, and other drugs into the United States and other countries, becoming the most wanted man in the world by the FBI and the Interpol during the early 2010s. Guzman admitted to having killed between 2,000 and 3,000 people during his reign, and he was estimated to be worth between $1 and $5 billion before his definitive arrest in 2017. Guzman had already been put in prison twice before, in 1993 and 2014, but had escaped both times. His first prison escape was in 2001, after 8 years in reclusion in a Mexican prison, in a carefully planned operation that involved bribing prison officials and building a tunnel that led directly to his cell. Guzman's associates spent months digging the tunnel, which was over a mile long and equipped with lighting and ventilation systems. On the day of the escape, Guzman simply walked through the tunnel and climbed up a ladder to freedom. El Chapo's second escape in 2015 was even more audacious. This time, he escaped from a maximum security prison in Mexico by crawling through a tunnel that had been dug under his cell. The tunnel was nearly a mile long and had a ventilation system, lighting, and a motorcycle that Guzman used to speed through the tunnel. The tunnel took several months to dig and was equipped with tools that had been smuggled into the prison. Despite these escapes, Guzman was eventually arrested again in 2017, and this time, he was extradited to the United States, where he was put in a maximum security prison where he remains today. Number 8. Griselda Blanco. Ana Griselda Blanco Restrepo was a notorious Colombian drug lord and the most powerful woman in the history of drug trafficking. Born in 1943 in Cartagena, Colombia, she became known as the godmother of cocaine, and was instrumental in the development of the Medellin cartel, working closely with Pablo Escobar and other prominent drug lords. Her organization was responsible for smuggling an estimated 3,400 pounds of cocaine into the United States each month, and she was one of the first drug lords to establish the motorcycle method of smuggling drugs across the Mexican border, which involved strapping cocaine to the underside of motorcycles and driving them across the border undetected. She was estimated to be worth around $2 billion at the height of her power, and was known for her extravagant lifestyle, which included expensive cars, jewelry, and properties. Blanco was arrested in the United States in 1985 and extradited to Colombia, where she was sentenced to more than 20 years in prison. She ended up being released in 2004, but didn't get to enjoy her freedom for many years, as she was assassinated in 2012 by a motorcycle gunman in Colombia. Number 7. Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha. Born in 1947 in Pacho, Colombia, and known as El Mexicano, Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha was a Colombian drug lord and one of the key figures in the Medellin cartel. He started his criminal career as a small-time smuggler of marijuana and other drugs and ended up becoming one of the most powerful drug lords in the world. At the height of his power, Rodriguez Gacha was estimated to be worth over $5 billion. He was eventually killed in a shootout with Colombian police and DEA agents in 1989, and his death was a major blow to the Medellin cartel. Number 6. The Orihuela brothers. Gilberto and Miguel Orihuela were the leaders of the Cali cartel, which was initially involved in smuggling marijuana, and later became heavily involved in cocaine trafficking, eventually overtaking the Medellin cartel as the dominant drug trafficking organization in Colombia after Escobar's death. Born in the 1940s, the Orihuela brothers were known for their sophisticated and efficient operations, being able to launder large amounts of money through legitimate businesses. At the height of their power, the Orihuela brothers were estimated to be worth around $3 billion, and their cartel was responsible for supplying up to 80% of the world's cocaine. In 1995, Gilberto Orihuela was arrested and extradited to the United States. Miguel Orihuela was arrested a few years later, and both were eventually convicted and are now serving lengthy prison sentences in the United States. Number 5. The Ochoa brothers. Jorge Luis, Fabio, and Juan David Ochoa were all co-founders of the Medellin cartel. Born into a wealthy family in the Antioquia region of Colombia, they were well-educated and respected members of their community, but became involved in drug trafficking in the early 1970s. They were known for their sophisticated and professional approach to drug trafficking, and they were involved in every aspect of the cocaine trade, from production to distribution, and were known to have close ties to high-ranking government officials in Colombia. In the 1980s, the Ochoa brothers became some of the richest and most powerful drug traffickers in the world, being estimated to be worth around $6 billion. In 1991, they were arrested by Colombian authorities and extradited to the United States, where they were sentenced to lengthy prison terms. Number 4. Amado Carrillo Fuentes. Born in 1956 in Sinaloa, Mexico, Amado Carrillo Fuentes took over the Juarez cartel in 1993 after the death of its former leader, Rafael Aguilar Guajardo, and was known for his innovative smuggling techniques, particularly the use of airplanes to transport large quantities of cocaine and other drugs across the US-Mexico border, which earned him the nickname, the Lord of the Skies. Carrillo Fuentes was one of the most powerful drug traffickers in the world and was estimated to be worth around $25 billion, making him one of the richest criminals in history. He was also known for his extravagant lifestyle, as he owned a fleet of planes and luxury cars, and he had a private zoo on his estate. He also spent millions of dollars on plastic surgery to alter his appearance and avoid detection by law enforcement. His reign didn't last long, though, as in 1997, Carrillo Fuentes died under mysterious circumstances while undergoing plastic surgery to change his appearance. Some reports suggest that he died as a result of complications from the surgery, while others speculate that he was murdered by rivals or by Mexican government agents. Number 3. Dawood Ibrahim. Born in 1955 in Mumbai, India, Dawood Ibrahim is the leader of the D Company, a criminal organization that is involved in a wide range of illegal activities, specializing in drug trafficking, extortion, and money laundering. Ibrahim started out as a small-time street criminal in Mumbai. Over time, he rose through the ranks of the criminal underworld, becoming boss. In the 1980s and 1990s, Ibrahim's gang became involved in the drug trade, smuggling large quantities of heroin and other drugs into India from Pakistan and Afghanistan. They also became involved in the Bollywood film industry, using their money and influence to produce films and launder their illicit proceeds. Ibrahim is estimated to be worth $6.7 billion, and is known for his links to international terrorism, particularly his alleged involvement in the 1993 Bombay bombings, which killed 257 people and injured over 700 others. Dawood Ibrahim has been on the run for several decades now. He is believed to have fled India in the 1980s and has since been living in hiding, primarily in Pakistan. He is considered one of the most wanted fugitives in the world and is subject to international sanctions and travel restrictions. Number 2. Kun Sa. Also known as Chang Chi-fu, Kun Sa was a Burmese drug lord who became one of the most notorious figures in the international drug trade. Born in 1934 in the Shan state of Burma, now Myanmar, Kun Sa started his criminal career in the 1950s, working as a smuggler of opium and other drugs between Burma and Thailand. In the 1960s, he became involved in the Shan United Army, a militant group that fought for autonomy for the Shan state, and using his connections to the Shan United Army and other rebel groups, Kun Sa built a vast drug trafficking network that controlled much of the opium trade in Southeast Asia. He was believed to be worth as much as $300 billion at the height of his power, which would make him the richest criminal ever, as well as one of the wealthiest people in the history of humanity. Kun Sa had brutal tactics, using torture and murder to maintain control over his criminal empire, which lasted around 20 years. He was also known for his nationalist and anti-communist beliefs, which helped him gain support from some segments of the population in Burma. His criminal story had a happy ending, contrary to the rest of the list's members, as in 1996, Kun Sa surrendered to the Burmese government under a deal that granted him immunity from prosecution and allowed him to keep much of his wealth. He retired from the drug trade and became a prominent figure in Burmese politics, advocating for peace and reconciliation between the government and ethnic minority groups. He died of natural causes in 2007. Number 1. Pablo Escobar. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria is perhaps the most known and successful drug lord ever. Born in 1949 in Rio Negro, Colombia, he grew up in poverty and turned to a life of crime at a young age. In the 1970s, Escobar, also known as El Patron, started smuggling cocaine into the United States as the leader of the Medellin cartel. He was responsible for up to 80% of the cocaine smuggled into the United States in the 1980s. Escobar's drug empire made him one of the wealthiest people in the world, being featured in the top 10 list of the richest people in the world at some point in the late 1980s, with an estimated net worth of $30 billion. He used part of his wealth to fund social programs in Colombia and gain popularity among the poor people of the country. However, Escobar's reign of terror was marked by assassinations, bombings, and kidnappings. He was responsible for the deaths of thousands of people, including government officials, law enforcement, and innocent civilians. One of Escobar's most notorious acts was the bombing of Avianca Flight 203 in 1989, which killed all 107 people on board, and whose purpose was to kill a presidential candidate who was on the flight. In that same year, the Medellin cartel declared war on the Colombian state. In 1991, Escobar surrendered to Colombian authorities as part of a deal that allowed him to serve time in a luxurious prison that he built himself, which was more like an incredible and luxurious resort. He continued to run his drug empire from this so-called prison, which was branded La Catedral, while avoiding extradition to the United States. In 1992, Escobar escaped from La Catedral after authorities learned he was still operating from it, and went into hiding. In December 1993, after 17 months on the run, Colombian authorities located Escobar's hideout in Medellin. A shootout ensued, and Escobar was killed by police. His death marked the end of the Medellin cartel and the beginning of a new era in the drug trade in Colombia. Well, there you have it. These are the 10 most powerful kingpins in history. If you have reached this far, make sure to like the video and comment your thoughts on the list. Also, be sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss any of our videos. This is Who's Number 1. See you next time.